Good evening. I'm Gary Franchi, Next News Network Chief White House Correspondent, bringing you the latest White House news from the past 24 hours here and across our streaming partner on X at Trump Daily Post. President Trump's Georgia stop drove the day, a family-focused push on Trump accounts, a forceful defense of border enforcement and election integrity, fresh call for a great health care plan, and a confident message on an economy he said is ready to blow everything away. And according to the daily guidance, the president's Wednesday schedule began with executive time at the White House before travel to Dover Air Force Base for a dignified transfer, and then on to Georgia for an afternoon of remarks in Marietta. From today's pool report, the travel day, they gathered momentum early at the Ellipse, where the in-town press pool assembled for the president's departure as Marine One departed to lift off in windy conditions. At 9:30 a.m., President Trump stepped off the motorcade, saluted, boarded Marine One, and departed at 9:34. Caroline Leavitt, Natalie Harp, and Walt Nauta boarded moments later as coverage shifted to the out-of-town pool. On the travel side, the president's trip was set to carry him from Joint Base Andrews to Delaware, then Georgia. That same morning, he issued a statement warning Iran that any aggression against shipping in the Strait of Hormuz would bring attacks on additional Iranian infrastructure. A clear America First message of deterrence and strength. A separate travel note listed the party flying with the president, including the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, General Dan Kane, Caroline Leavitt, Ross Worthington, Walt Nauta, Chris M. Brosini, Matthew Brissot, Natalie Harp, and Chamberlain Harris. At Joint Base Andrews, Marine One landed at 9:44 a.m. The president stepped off at 9:48. He exchanged salutes, moved to the air stairs, and spoke briefly with the press before boarding Air Force One. He said he was heading to Dover to honor fallen service members, called them great heroes, and stressed again that Iran cannot be allowed to obtain a nuclear weapon. Air Force One lifted off for Dover at 10:01 a.m. The aircraft touched down at Dover Air Force Base at 10:23, and by 10:38, the president had deplaned, greeted officials, and rolled out at 10:40 in an armored Escalade to meet privately with families of 4 fallen service members: First Lieutenant Tyler J. Feehan, Sergeant Michael E. Swinton, Sergeant Angel S. Rampersad, and Private Isabella Gonzales. During the hold before the transfer, the press pool waited in a passenger terminal room and signed restrictions governing the coverage of the solemn event. Then the pool staged near the cargo door of a C-17 as 2 transfer vehicles and an Army carry team stood by. Distinguished visitors included senior military leaders, Senator Tom Tillis, Senator Chris Coons, and the president waiting nearby in his vehicle. Another update placed Caroline Leavitt and Natalie Harp among that distinguished visitor group. The dignified transfer began at 11:42 a.m. as the families arrived on the flight line. President Trump, Secretary Hegseth, General Kane, General Leneve, Admiral Caudell, and others bowed their heads in prayer, and the carry team transferred 4 cases with salutes rendered at each moment. The final case was loaded at noon and the flight line dismissed at 12:11. A later note first signaled an incoming press gaggle that was quickly corrected. There was no gaggle, and Air Force One departed at 12:51 p.m. with members of Lieutenant Feehan's family on board for a courtesy flight home to Georgia. Another travel update put wheels up from Dover at 12:54 p.m. and Air Force One landed at Dobbins Air Reserve Base in Georgia at 2:22 p.m. The president, deplaning just about a few minutes later, shook hands with an Air Force greeter and moved to the Beast at 12:39, with the Feehan family and Walt Nauta accompanying him. At 2:52, the press pool reached Wheeler High School in the Marietta area after a police-secured drive-line, largely by Trump supporters. Inside the gym, the setup centered on the presidential lectern and signs reading, "Powering the American Dream." President Trump entered at 3:33 p.m. to strong applause and Lee Greenwood's "God Bless the USA," with familiar supporters in the crowd, including the Front Row Joes and Blake Marnell in the brick suit. He opened with a joke about 2028 running before turning to the morning's hardest duty, honoring the fallen at Dover. He singled out Lieutenant Tyler Feehan, praised his promise, and thanked the family directly. The room answered with loud applause. In one notable moment, the president gave rare credit to Operation Warp Speed while reviewing the record of his 2 non-consecutive terms, then pivoted to the economy and said the country is performing at a level ready to outpace everyone else. Throughout the Georgia stop, the White House message stayed focused on America First gains, Trump accounts, and opportunity for families, support for ICE and border security, backing for the Save America Act on election integrity, a push to move health care dollars directly to people instead of big insurance, and sharp criticism after 198 House Democrats voted against banning stock trading by members of Congress. The president wrapped his remarks at 4:50 p.m., and the motorcade had started rolling by 4:48 as the departure sequence got underway. Back at Dobbins, the motorcade entered the base and reached Air Force One at 5:08 p.m. The president boarding just 1 minute later. Air Force One lifted off for Joint Base Andrews at 5:21, closing out a day that moved from solemn military honors to a full-throttle case for growth, family opportunity, secure borders, clean elections, and strong American leadership. That's your White House rundown for July 22nd.